This mini-series is brought to you by Harting, a friend of the Automation Ladies and the industrial connectivity team on a mission to prove that every connection matters. Are you going to IMTS this year in Chicago? Well, Nikki is, and so is Harting. If you're walking around the IMTS show floor this year, you'll notice Harting connectors powering robots of all shapes and sizes and moving data through automation machinery. You can stop by their in-booth demo truck experience and get hands-on with Harting's famous modular connectors. And you can even customize your own, just like Lego. For a little more information about Harting, check out our episode from Season 3 with Ed and Goda, where we talk a little bit more about why the heck should we care about connectors. As always, we encourage you to connect with and get to know the people in our community, so go ahead and look up Ed, Goda, or Amanda Marks from Harting on LinkedIn and connect with them. You can also learn more about Harting at harting.com. This mini-series will run until September during IMTS, and then after IMTS, we will kick off Season 5 of Automation Ladies, the audio podcast, with some pre-recordings that we have in backlog. You can look for our LinkedIn Lives starting in October with our live recap from the AHTD Fall Meeting in Bellevue, Washington, and we should be doing regular LinkedIn Lives on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Central starting in October 2024. Finally, follow us, connect with us, please write us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Automation Ladies, if you haven't seen our content over there yet. And with that, welcome to our new mini-series with Harting, and I hope you guys are having a great summer.
I'm McKenzie Reed. I've worked for Harting for the last 8 years, and my primary function now is single-pair Ethernet standards development, mostly through ODBA, a little bit through IEEE and TIA, other standards organizations. And then last May, my wife and I acquired an industrial machinery company in South Florida, doing 3-axis CNC router tables and a proprietary machine that bends industrial outdoor signage. So like the profile for a sign that will go on the outside of your building or like a plaza or something like that. So industrial automation in that respect.
Right on. I guess I'll introduce myself again. We've met before. Ed Garskowitz, Ed G. Long-time Harting employee, 26 years. I am currently and most recently in the role of Senior Industrial Segment Manager for Automation and Robotics. A role, by the way, that with some big footsteps, because that's one of the roles that McKenzie, actually the role you joined the company with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yep. First automation ISM. That was when it was split from machinery and automation to just automation because the market had gotten big enough to like justify bringing on ahead, and I worked together in the same pod. You were energy then?
I was broadcasting and entertainment, which was a lot of fun.
Yep.
You said pod, like podcast?
Oh.
What's a pod?
Like our seating pod.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Like kind of this 4-person thing.
Is it circular? Why is it called a pod?
It was just like a big square, and we had like a meeting table in the middle of it. That was like my favorite setup that we had in the office.
I love the pod.
Mm-hmm.
It enables collaboration.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Little communities within your whole floor space.
Yep.
And so when I heard somebody on LinkedIn ask about connectors the other day, and this was a couple months ago, but kind of how we ended up connecting with Harting and why we're here having these conversations, it's just something that I'd never really thought about. It didn't touch what I did enough, but like a factory floor, a manufacturing facility has so many facets. And I think a lot of us are kind of used to our little space in the industry. We look at things through a certain lens. And me coming in as a sales engineer with vision systems, of course, I was always looking for a problem to solve with vision, right? And then I ended up wanting to learn more about the handling systems, more about the control systems. And I guess, I just kind of can't get enough of trying to learn the next thing.
Sure.
Didn't think about connectors before, but I am actually really fascinated by, meeting you and your journey, because I actually now have a goal. I would love to own a manufacturing business, so that at some point I can kind of practice what I preach.
Yeah.
Test your own stuff on your own business.
We're about a year in, almost exactly, coming up in June. And it's a lot of what you just said of like the anxiety at the bottom level of like, oh my God, I feel like I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I've been in automation for 12 years and I'm just like, yep, no. All right. What is this problem? Every day is a new problem. Every day is like, we have to try and find a solution in real time. Whether it's like a machine that's been out in the field for 15 years, which we don't even make anymore. And we're 3 iterations of machine past that one, but we have to support it.
Yeah.
Imitation.
Yeah. Or just improving the design of what we are doing now, which is, including connectors. Like we're taking hard looks at Harting products and then things that are outside of the Harting portfolio to connectorize more of the machinery. So it's like, I was just actually talking about that this morning with one of our suppliers of like practicing what I preach. It's like, I've been talking about automation for a long time. I did automation for 4.5 years at Rockwell Automation as a field engineer. Like I didn't just jump into like a machinery business. It was like, they shipped me all over the country starting up industrial machinery. So it's like a little bit of that experience, but different animal now of like being in the driver's seat.
Yeah. It's real.
Yeah. It's fun though. We just went to our like biggest trade show of the year last month for the industrial sign industry. And my wife comes from that world of doing like trade show exhibits and whole like user experiences. So that was a lot of fun to like kind of reintroduce the whole company there.
I mean, that's a huge resource that you have. I mean, most new companies or people starting out, like I've built many a booth from scratch, not knowing what I'm doing whatsoever, with no professionals. Sure. So that's a pretty nice built-in advantage that you have right there.
Yeah.
But something that I'm seeing, more and more in the industry as well is that as we get a chance to talk about it more with the outside world, we can have more collaborations with people, whether they know our industry or not. Like there's more people kind of coming in, becoming aware of machinery, automation, manufacturing, what we do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think it's really cool. And even if they have no background in it, like they want to come in. And it's been traditionally kind of a closed industry. Like you have to have connections to be able to learn about this stuff. And I love this direction of like Harting being part of this. Hey, we want to just get the information out to the people however they want it, right? Be a supportive resource, be somebody that people can call on when they need to know about this very niche area of the industry, which, I mean, there's just like so much to know. Mm-hmm. Our good friend Josh Varghese made a really good point the other day. He said, if you want to be impressive, just get really good at like a really niche thing that most people don't care about, and then you'll always sound super smart.
Yeah.
And that's easy to do in this.
Yeah. You could
niches in the niche.
Pull on whatever thread you want to pull on. And, talking about being a subject matter expert or trying to just get the word out there. We're sitting with the person that's probably been in more Harting marketing videos than anyone, which is Ed, and touched basically every product line in your 26 years, you said?
Yeah, that's right.
I think we do a pretty good job of that, of like whether it's Industrial Ethernet Week, which happened a couple months ago, which was single pair Ethernet focused, as well as other parts of emerging Ethernet or like our Han product line. We're pretty much always kind of doing customer outreach, learning sessions. Have you guys seen our digital experience center?
No.
In the headquarters? It's very cool, state of the art. Instead of traveling during the COVID year, we built that facility with like a big LED wall for presentations. So if you've seen anything that's kind of recent within the last few years of Harting, it's out of that studio.
Right. That's where Goda and I had our conversation the last time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys were definitely, if not our only guests that like had a recording studio on the other end of our meeting.
Nice.
Versus just, showing up with headphones or whatever. Right. So it's very impressive. And I think we're very much looking forward to an opportunity to visit. Not that, I'm sure we have an open invitation, but we do a whole lot of travel already.
Sure.
And, it's trying to really, like, if you gave me carte blanche, like what I wanted to do all year, and it had nothing to do with like family responsibilities or other work that I have to get done, I would be visiting all of these places and talking to all the Eds in all of the different niches, because they are also the people, like, as the workforce is transitioning, and especially younger people, they stick around one discipline, less often than I think used to be the case. But once you find people that are passionate enough and have been in a niche long enough, like, the more we can proliferate what they know and make sure that they're a known connection in all of our different communities. I know for us, we work with a lot of like smaller systems integrators that are growing. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be experts at everything. But in order to be effective and grow their company, they really have to know who to call on.
Sure. Right.
For those different areas.
Yeah, I'd say we talk about that a lot when it comes to the standards body. What we talk about within ODBA meetings a lot is that we have to define these standards down to granular levels that we haven't done before, which includes connectors, actually, calling out one specific connector to use for IP20 applications or IP65, 67 applications. And it's because I fully agree that I think that people are going to be more generalists than specific moving forward. It's like within basically any company that you look at, people are wearing multiple hats and don't really have the bandwidth anymore to just be that specialist. You're expected to be the subject matter expert and extremely niche specific, and also do another probably 2 roles on top of that.
Yeah.
So from the standards point of view, we're trying to go down to an additional layer that we didn't go to before, to be extremely explicit of like, you don't have to go figure this out. Like, we will figure it out for you and just give you the roadmap, and then you just implement. And you keep going about, your design process. Like, here's the PHY that you use, here's the cable, here's the chipset, here's the connector for this application, and being more specific about what applications certain technologies go into and which ones they don't go into, I think is kind of the main difference.
Right. I would say McKenzie is the Michael Jordan of SPE. I kind of feel really honored sitting next to him. So if you have any questions about that in particular, I would fire away right now.
I guess my question is, SPE specifically, how do you see that potential to transform your manufacturing business? Like, what do you have strategic imperatives to, or plans to utilize that technology specifically as any kind of catalyst within your business?
I think that it's going to enable IoT really for the first time. Like, we've all been, in different sectors of this industry for varying amounts of time. And I think that we haven't seen IoT grow the way that we've seen IoT grow, So like on the consumer side with consumer appliances or whatever you choose to look at, smart TVs, whatever, everything is integrated. Everything talks to each other. Everything in your home talks to each other if you want it to be that way. We haven't seen that happen in industrial automation or process automation yet. I think that SPE will help with actually bringing that to the forefront, because you're going to cost effectively put things on Ethernet for the first time.
Yeah.
It's going to be easier to implement at varying speeds and distances. I know that you spoke with Goda and Ed about this previously, but like starting at 10 megabit per second and going up to multi-gigabit speed, all on one network, one common protocol, one common connector. If it's for industrial automation or process automation, there are a few different flavors, but I really just see it facilitating that for the most part. And within my own business, where we are already planning to implement it, is the edge cases. So the sensors that we already have on the machine, some of them can be retrofitted for SPE, which is what we're working on right now.
Okay.
Other ones where, there are adapter kits where Harting has partnered with companies like SparkFun and other partners to put a whole adapter kit together. That's another one that I'm looking at implementing to just add more sensing to specifically the CNC 3-axis router tables, where we want to start measuring temperature and vibration on the spindle, which will run 10 hours a day at, 24,000 RPM, just back-to-back cutting for wholesale manufacturers. So we want to be able to have our customers monitor what's going on with their machine. And then the bonus being that we're also able to monitor it where we get an alert and are able to actually contact our customer before they contact us for technical support.
That's huge.
That's going to be a big enabler for us moving forward. And then it's just more analytics. I want to know more about what's going on with the machine before things, break or need maintenance.
Yeah, so a big part of it is obviously operational efficiency, cost savings, quality. But then really it's also enabling you to potentially provide a much better customer experience, right, than your competitor.
Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's, on the one side of the business, we have a specialized machine that has a patent and all this this fancy technology. On the other side, with the 3-axis CNC router tables, if you're familiar with them, a router table is a router table is a router table. We're all, it's the same general technology. So you have to set yourself apart in other ways. And the way that we do it is through our service and technical support. And so this is just the next iteration of that. Is we're remotely, if you give us access, we're remotely monitoring your machine and can tell you when it's time for maintenance, when you're having premature wear on any one of the specific components. And one of the most expensive and sensitive things on the machine is actually the 11 horsepower spindle. So you want to protect that at all costs.
Yeah.
But some of our customers are more output driven, and they're like, we will just replace the spindle. We are just all about output. And other ones are like, no, I want this spindle to last for 15 years. So anything that we can do to protect it, we want to protect it. So, again, going back to connectivity and networks, that's really where we're looking to improve. By the end of this year, we aim to have a single pair Ethernet solution on the machine.
Pretty exciting. But yeah, like you said, different customers have different goals. And so they're not all focused on the same metric necessarily. I've talked to people that are like, oh, we have a machine down and, this is a huge deal. And some people, it costs them, tens of thousands of dollars an hour or
Sure.
more. And then others are like, yeah, it's, it's totally fine. This is down for a week. So you can't make the assumptions. But I think flexibility, connectorization, modularization, flexibility, right? And having, let's say, something like Ethernet, you can choose to use all of that power or not, but you have it built in if you need it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm seeing
absolutely.
a lot of that in terms of like design projects that we've been working on is designing for future capabilities as well. Because we all know that like you have a process today, but if you're a forward thinking company, you're going to potentially change it or add on to it or do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that without starting from scratch? Do you have a piece of hardware that you have to completely replace the system, or can you, make those changes as business evolves?
Right.
And I think we're seeing that with a lot of soft platforms that are coming out, less, reliance on one specific piece of hardware. And, I think the standardization of connectors, right? You get more flexibility by it being standardized, because then you can use them in more places. You can, stock replacements and spares and things like that. And I don't know if it's like commercial reasons or industry norms or whatever, but we've been very siloed in the past. And like, I guess the same thing can be said for things like the consumer ecosystem.
Sure.
But wanting to keep people in your kind of grip, right? Use this specialty and then you can't replace it except for with anything but mine.
Yep.
And I think our generation in particular and younger people, they don't appreciate that attitude anymore. They're like, you know what? I want you to actually earn it. And I want to be able to switch over and not just use you because the cost of changing is too high or because like I'm now caught in some sort of barrier. Competitively, obviously companies want to build a moat.
I think a really good example of that, and I'm not the expert on this, I don't operate within this standards project, but it's the Open Compute project for data centers, which we've been involved in, I think, since back in 2016 or 2018, which was basically they went to all of the vendors within the data center space and said, we want you to standardize on, you can have your own proprietary technology, but we have to standardize on where the mounting holes are, where of all the individual components that go inside of these blades for data centers.
Yeah.
We have to standardize on what these look like and where they go and how they get mounted and what their power requirements are and what their outputs are. Everything like that, they moved in the direction of you can be competitive in your offering, but we have to standardize on the hardware. So I completely agree with you that the users are going to be looking for more options where you may want to use vendor A for an HMI, vendor B for a PLC, and vendor C for a drive. And the expectation moving forward is going to be that all of those things work together and aren't, safeguarded behind a proprietary, like annual cost or that they just flat out won't work with each other.
Yeah, and I think COVID kind of exposed a lot of the flaws of this model where we don't work together. Because if you can't get something, you have to do something. You have to change over, right? It was really painful for a lot of people.
That was before my time at CLN, but that exact thing happened where the manufacturer of the variable frequency drives that we were using, they just nowhere in the world, all of a sudden you could get them. And so they had to get really creative of finding an alternate that would be as close to a drop-in replacement as you could get. And it wasn't a seamless fit, but it worked. And I have about 50 of them still sitting in the inventory because we don't use them. It was just kind of to get through that push.
Yeah.
And now I have to, figure out what I'm going to do with that. But, that's a pain point that I'm living right now is that before my time, they had a problem. They just had to solve it for the moment. And then now we're kind of figuring out what we're going to do with it now that things have gotten back to normal. But I'm even seeing that, for whatever reason, there's not a root cause that I've identified yet, but that lead times are getting pushed out pretty drastically. In Q1 of this year, we went on one part from 6 weeks to 22 within, one reorder.
Yeah.
And couldn't really get an explanation as to why. So we're looking for those options of vendor A, B, and C as a swap out replacement when we need it.
Right.
Yeah, because relying on one vendor or everything is great. It's fine. But when you're forced to make these trade-offs because you can't get what you originally signed up for, you have to have some options.
Sure.
And I think, a lot of people kind of changed, this is actually necessary. We have to be able to make these crosses. We have to be able to collaborate as an industry. Because ultimately, if our customers can't automate, then our entire industry loses.
Yep. Right.
And I think, with robotic deployments, for instance, why the heck has it taken so long in the US for us to really start deploying lots of robotics? And not to say that robots are the answer to every automation challenge or that we should be automating everything with robots.
Sure.
Personally, having worked with gantry systems, there's tons of other options, which are often better. But I've seen, robot deployments that failed. It was really a lack of training, maintenance, knowledge. And I think if we standardize more, then those sorts of things can be more general. People can be generally more aware of hey, this is generally how we need to maintain and operate robots.
Mm-hmm.
Versus it kind of used to be every vendor had their own class that was very specific. It's a very closed system. And so it just doesn't become general knowledge. It's kind of gate kept. You have to be able to afford to go to the class and become a specialist in this
right.
and learn this particular operating system. And this is maybe just, my view looking back. I feel like we would have gotten more deployment faster if we were kind of more open about it this way. Shared more information, made more hardware, more interfaces interoperable. Because then, it's risky to go down a path, invest a lot of money in something that you can't change.
Sure.
And manufacturing businesses, a lot of them, I mean, maybe you can speak to this, but your goal every day is to run your machines and run your business. And then you have some time to hopefully work on the business, make investments, all of those things. But you have to be conservative. You can't just jump on every new trend and start implementing it on the floor.
Sure.
Does it de-risk it to feel like you have options and, kind of more ways that you can make money on your investment if it doesn't, if things change?
Right now, we're in the mode of we're making improvements to both of the flagship product lines, and we're doing it slowly and I think with purpose to make sure that we don't break anything that came before.
Yeah.
Because as I said before, we have to support what's out there, and specifically on our channel letter machine, we'll release a new version of it, when it's ready and eventually, but I want to make sure that everything that we change on that machine is reverse compatible where we can put it into a kit and ship it to a customer, because I want to make sure the customers that bought a machine in 2023 or 2022 are still going to get the latest and greatest in terms of the software and the firmware side, which we're working on, as well as any hardware improvements. So it's taking longer than I would like it to, but we're doing it in a way where it's okay, we're going to make sure that these are drop-in replacement improvements to the machines that are out in the field. And that's kind of how we're de-risking the situation of getting away from products and suppliers that are maybe long in the tooth, where we have concerns that we're not going to be able to get those components in a few years, and just making sure that, the even machines that we haven't made, product lines that we haven't made in a few years are still supported with the latest and greatest in controls and electronics. Ed, I think you were going to say something.
Oh. One of the things that I wanted to say on the standardization topic is that what I like about it, the beauty of it, also is it forces the supplier to innovate. So let's say the interface itself is standard, right? It has to fit. It has to fit in that box, that profile, whatever. So how does the supplier differentiate their product from any other person's product besides price? And so what you do is you add bells, whistles where you can. Maybe you make your product easier to use, maybe field installable, whatever you can do to then differentiate your product. So I think standardization also supports innovation kind of in a backdoor way.
I have a question about single pair Ethernet because I'm
Sure.
thinking about like implementation and like this is after, because we have IO Link right now, and that's kind of how we do it. We do it in clusters. Single pair Ethernet is going to let us do every single device has an IP address, and we're just going to talk to that directly. But that's going to blow up our networks. And so, do you guys have a partner, in networks, to help your customers when they do finally get all of their devices in their plants with their own IP address?
Yeah, it's
which is, I think I'm excited for that.
It's a challenge, and it may finally push us into IPv6 versus V4.
Definitely.
which has been an option on a lot of control devices for the last 15 years at least. For me, when I was commissioning machinery, it was like a checkbox of whether I wanted to use IPv4 or V6. For any listener that's not familiar with what we're talking about, it's just adding more strings to the IP address.
Yeah, we literally ran out of IP addresses.
Yeah, which would just exponentially open it up. In terms of the bandwidth and the traffic on there, that's kind of where I think that the network will continue to have to evolve. Like
we have to get really good at that.
ODBA did a good job with this back in the DeviceNet days, where you would have a DeviceNet network of 40 nodes, and maybe all of those were variable frequency drives, and then it had a converter to Ethernet, and then from your PLC, you would only really see that connection point. And then you could drill down into all those drives. But now what we're talking about is each one of those drives has a IP address. And not only that, but all the sensors that are out in the conveyor belts or your process automation application, they also have it. So I think that it won't be gateways in the way that we understand gateways today, but there will be access points to where, you kind of just like open up the tree and here's a whole plethora of IP addresses. And then you close that one, you navigate to the next tree, and then you have a whole bunch of them. But it is a challenge. The network companies, like the ones that do the networking technology and switches and routers, they're all taking very serious looks at how we deploy this. I think the benefit of it will be that there aren't going to be a lot of customers that do a full deployment of SPE, and we're changing over our entire plant. Maybe there will be like a greenfield customer that does that, where we want the latest and greatest of everything.
Yeah.
But I think that SPE will be rolled out into the market and already is being rolled out into the market as like pocket application, and we can kind of like deal with it as we go.
I'm hearing from our friends in networking that the startup-y customers are the ones that are wanting basically everything like with a single just IP address up to the cloud.
Yep.
Like virtual PLCs, they're really trying to get ahead of this, using the older hardware. And I think also their talent pool is more modern software engineers. And so they have a hard time getting like traditional controls folks, because just the way that their companies are operating, the way they're recruiting, right? They have this kind of different talent pool that they're looking at. And I think they're the ones, that would be doing a greenfield project. Like, let's just connect everything this way, right? I think that's a very small percentage
industry 4.0
of what's going on. Yeah. And we really try to stay away from those types of buzzwords because we feel like they've been talked about for so long.
Oh, yes.
Are they being realized on the floor? In most cases, not. And we see great presentations with all this promise. And then it's like, but you kind of glossed over a part there that's actually really big and really complicated.
Yeah, the implementation.
Yeah.
And how do you go line down to test this thing, which has been simulated, but you're maybe the first one to actually deploy it. That's the other part of the standardization process, where the market is really pushing us at the moment to publish standards for single pair Ethernet guidance, because some of the biggest movers in the industry are ready to move. Yeah. And that will drag the rest of the market, but they're not going to do it until they have specific guidelines to do what they want to do. Yeah. And a lot of people have the hesitation because they want to see the big movers move before they start, making changes on their plant floor.
Yeah. Is there anything you can recommend to us, like to stay on top of news in this area, the standards bodies, like what's going to be coming out, what people where you recommend they can, like, if they want to be involved or just follow along?
Sure.
Kind of as this is evolving.
So within ODBA, they do a pretty good job of like public news releases of what we're working on and what they're allowed to talk about. One of the most exciting things, which Ed and Goda touched on, was that last year we did a marketing study of the market readiness for single pair Ethernet, and ODVA published that last October. It was very surprising the amount of people that are ready to adopt and deploy now. And so kind of leading the project that I lead within ODVA, I was like, okay, we need to move forward towards publication, because the market is more ready to adopt in a faster time frame than I was expecting, honestly. Yeah. So ODVA is a good resource. IEEE is always a good resource with the publications that they put out. I'd say that Harting does a good job with our industrial Ethernet weeks of like, this is what's coming. This is what we're working on within standardization. Just in the last few weeks, there's been calls for interest within ODVA, Profinet organization, and advanced physical layer for more collaboration across the global standards groups to make sure that the one standard is being put out and is not directly in conflict with another standard that's being put out in Europe. Yeah. Or, just that we're not breaking anything along the way as we're publishing what we're doing. So it's a challenge, because these are all volunteer-led organizations where you're doing that on top of your normal day-to-day job. And now there's a lot of groups having the same conversations, but we have to do that to make sure that we're, not
check each other.
Yeah. That we're not missing something, that we're not missing an entire subsegment of the market. Like you said, that you would come from process automation, and that's a whole different application use case than
we do flow meters that have Ethernet. So I'm just thinking process stuff that everything could have.
Yeah. And
there's already 2 wires going to it.
Explosion proof applications. That was the APL project. Cool. That they were the first to deploy single pair Ethernet, and it uses a completely different connector solution than what is general purpose single pair Ethernet, which is kind of like the working term of the projects that we're working on now, because it is going inside an explosion proof cabinet. So they're just landing on a terminal block, or they picked a M12A code for their application. But what we're working on within our working groups is completely different from that. But we have to make sure, okay, is this all going to connect up in the same switch? And on one side of the switch is general purpose SPE, and on the other side of the switch is APL explosion proof applications, or are these 2 different networks that have to talk to each other? Like, those are all the things where we're checking each other and cross collaborating, across different standards organizations and across different companies. That's like what I'd say is most exciting of all of this is, we work with direct competitors, automation companies that are historically direct competitors and never were really in the same room, are directly working on this technology together, which I think is really promising.
Yeah, we're part of an association for high-tech distribution, so distributors and there are tons of competitors in that group.
Sure.
But it's growing. It's growing a lot. And like more and more people come to these conferences every year. So I think people are seeing kind of the benefit of, you know what, these are my competitors, but we all have certain things that we can actually work together on. Sharing knowledge, best practices. Obviously, standards are something that just the industry in general has to happen. But the more we can collaborate on them, the better. And I'll just keep my big soapbox is always the pie is getting bigger.
Sure.
For all of us. And it's really the customer that needs to see the success of this. And us infighting and or, keeping things to ourselves and things like that. If it doesn't, it won't help the customer. It makes all of us look bad.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that, working in standards organizations has had a positive impact on your career? Does that feel like you've made personal connections, or it's added to your, the enrichment of you actually doing your job? Because it's challenging, right? Like you said, it's a volunteer gig that you do on top of your normal job. And now you run a business, right? Same thing with podcasting. We find it to be extremely rewarding, but it can get exhausting.
Sure.
But for us, the pros heavily outweigh the cons. Would you say that participating in these types of standards organizations has been positive?
Yeah. And I would say one of the largest reasons why is because I have professional working relationships with our direct competition now.
That's cool.
We're on we're on first name basis. Like we, have conversations about this technology inside the standards groups. Like a lot of the times we don't agree on everything, but we have built a bridge, which I've never seen in my professional career,
better for all of society.
Yeah.
Of working with our direct competition, having personal and professional relationships with them where like we know each other, we meet in person a few times a year, we meet virtually every week, and that would have never happened before. We ask about like, oh, what did you do on this like vacation that you recently went on, or some people were traveling to see the recent eclipse, and you kind of chop it up and have those conversations before the meeting gets started, and I've never seen that before, so it's pretty cool to see.
Makes a huge difference to get to know people a little bit on a personal level, because at the end of the day, like, we're all people. We have to spend time with all these other people at work, and it's much better if you can get a little bit of joy out of it.
Yeah.
And feel like you're actually there, for a common purpose or to help each other.
Well, when you need to push and when you need to pull,
Yeah.
It makes it easier because you have a relationship with this person where they're not just going to completely shut the door every time because you're a competitor. Like, we work collaboratively and maybe not always in our own best interest, but in the best interest of the industry and the technology. And because you have that relationship with them, they're able to like work with you more than I think that they otherwise would be.
And I'm not a specifying engineer, but I am a buyer in some capacity now with my role. And all other things being equal, somebody may have a great technology, but I personally want to know that there's some goodness behind like the company,
Sure.
or that their people are community minded, or that, and I see and hear that from a lot of my peers, is they actually want to know a little bit about your motivations and how you act in the world as an organization and like your people, in addition to just the technology. Because there's so many choices now for tech. You can, find anything.
Sure.
From a lot of places.
The differentiators. I mean, you want to like who you're working with or who you're buying from.
Yeah.
That could be the difference between buying from vendor A, who's a little cheaper, and vendor B, who actually seems to be a quality person or about the world or sustainability, whatever. So
That's
I think
like sales 101, right? Like you're gonna go to the people that didn't make you mad, or the people that give you the better feel.
Yep.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, or we don't talk about it a lot, but it's engineering, it's not about feelings. You may think that all you want in the front of your brain, but your feelings are still at play, no matter how technical you're going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. When I get a tech support call about one of our machinery these days, like, we've hired a full-time tech support person to handle those, but for a while in the early days I was handling myself, and it is emotional, like somebody,
absolutely. Oh my God.
They've had a machine for 8 years and have never done scheduled maintenance on it, but then it goes down and they like literally call and are screaming at you. And it's tough not to get emotional in that situation, but it's like, okay, let's just work the problem.
This is your fault. No.
Yeah. Let's just, okay, what is going on?
Even though.
What are your team viewer credentials? Let's start there. Let me just like remote in, see what's going on. Yeah, I mean, we may not emote it, but it's always emotional.
absolutely. But that's how you produce a happy customer, I'm sure.
Yeah, so thank you so much for coming here and having this conversation with us. I mean, we love this, actually, just getting to know people on the podcast. Sure. We can have a whole hour to prepare ahead of time, but we just get to know each other. And this is, I think, hopefully the first of many conversations.
Great to meet you.
Out of all the thousands and thousands of people here, the people that have this mindset that they want to collaborate, that they want to, share knowledge and move our industry forward together, those are the people that we end up like coming back to again and again. And so as this single pair Ethernet rolls out more, as the standards come out, I really look forward to, following it and seeing, now that I know some people that I can talk to about it. It's not just like, oh, view a webinar.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many of those topics. And I'm like, yeah, there's so many innovations. And then I'm just going to forget them all because I don't care. I don't have a personal connection.
Especially during COVID, it was like every week, everybody was scrambling to
produce something.
And including us. This was even before our studio, and we were just doing it in like one of our office spaces. But it very quickly kind of washed over me of like, all right, well, there's 8 things to join this week from our target customers or our suppliers or whoever it was, like, what's the one that I want to actually like join? And maybe it did come down to, well, this is a person that I know. So like,
right.
I trust their opinion. I know that they're a subject matter expert, that they're going to, you know, do a deep dive. And this isn't going to be like just a general session. So that's a challenge for all of us in like doing content. I'm sure you both probably know that better than myself. But yeah, it's all fun.
We try to be transparent, and then one of the reasons why we do so many different formats of our content. Sometimes people are like, "What are you exactly?" I'm like, "Well, we're a podcast, but some of the conversations we want to have need show and tell, so we can't just do an audio recording like this." So we came up with this idea: demo days. Sometimes I just want to see a new cool product, and I'm not qualified to buy it right now, and so like, but can you just come give me a demo? Like, can you do it on camera so that my friends can also see it?
Sure.
Or if I want to, like, I thought it was super cool and I thought of someone that should have seen it, I can just send them the recording instead of now having to send them to you, and you qualify them to spend another hour to show them the same thing that you just showed to me. But yeah, we call it demo so that people know if they're going to come watch it, it's a sales demo.
Yeah.
It's not a podcast or a sales demo disguised as a podcast or a sales pitch disguised as a webinar.
Yep.
Like, let's just be real. Sometimes people want the sales pitch. Let them know that it's a sales pitch and let them know that that's what they're in for. Or if you're going to have a deep dive discussion with the subject matter expert about applications, then let people know that ahead of time. You know, we have so many invitations to so many things, and I'm really tired of like the next big thing in Industry 4.0, come watch our webinar. And I'm like, how is it going to be different from the webinar I've been on for the past 10 years?
Definitely. And on the CLN side, you know, which is still all very much like a raw and learning experience for me, we've had the best performance by not doing anything that's like sales related, but to reaching out to either an existing or a potential customer and just saying, send us a file and we will run it and we'll record it and we'll send you the result of, like, number one, how fast our machine is, and number two, the quality of what it outputs. And that is miles ahead of anything else that we're doing. It's just like, no, send us your worst file that you have a problem with, and like, let us run it and provide the results to you. And I mean, you know, sometimes out of the gate, it doesn't come out well, and it takes like massaging on our side. And then it's a learning experience of like, okay, we found out that we had to edit your file in like XYZ ways, and now it runs well. And so like, here's a immediate solution for you, and then keep us in mind in the future. And, you know, that's just what's worked for us so far.
I think we've all been a little jaded by all kinds of advertising over, you know, so long, of things that are shiny, that are really great, but the devil's in the details.
Sure.
And then we try it and then we fail or whatever. It doesn't live up to its hype. Like, I would rather see you like tell me your flaws ahead of time. Show me the demo and I know something's going to go wrong, but at least I know you're doing it live and not giving me something pre-canned that's so perfect that I would never be able to actually replicate that, because we all know real life always comes with challenges, right? As somebody that's been in the field, like actually starting up machines, the word seamless, is that a favorite of yours?
Oh, like, man.
Seamless integration. Anybody that actually does it, like, you kind of feel slapped in the face with that. So for us, like, embrace the fact that things are imperfect, and you can earn your stripes and respect, actually.
Sure.
Because people that really have been around the block, they don't want your shiny sales pitch. They want, how is this actually going to work for me? And the braver you are in trying to give that like a legit try and give them personalized answers, I think, we earn respect that way, oftentimes through our failures, in fact. And how do we deal with challenges versus just like having the coolest thing? And it's easy to market, but it's hard to follow up and practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, like I said, I think I tried to wrap this up once before, but I would probably keep talking about this for another hour. Thanks, everybody. We're doing a few more recordings today. I know this is not going to come out live because this show is crazy and we can't even stream stuff. The internet here is so bad.
Yeah.
But if you're catching this and you didn't come to Automate this year, we will be, back at every Automate, I'm sure, for years to come. And then there will also be Ethernet Week. What was it? Industrial Ethernet Week that Harting does. That's a virtual event.
Correct. Yeah, it was a few months ago, and we do a few different flavors of that, like across the year. It won't be called Industrial Ethernet Week, but like single pair Ethernet and all of our Ethernet solutions are included in multiple events throughout the year.
Okay, well, we'll be continuing these conversations, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.